So it is 7:08. Welcome to the March 19th, 2026 Master Plan Subcommittee meeting. We'll call ourselves to order and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So, let's see, we received additional information from Salem. We still have Phillips, and I did not tackle anything as I think after our meeting, I only had a week, and then my surgery took place, and
It's understandable.
that's, I'm still rather fatigued. It's not like when I had my gallbladder out, it was like, that was wicked bad. But it's just the pain. Enduring pain is fatiguing. So, but things are progressing. So where do we want to start?
Well, since I just reviewed what Salem had emailed us,
Okay.
I would be open to jumping to some of Salem's work here.
Okay? Let's do that.
Okay, so, yeah, I guess the two sections I had were zoning and economic development. So, tried to come up with goals for each and then broke that down into objectives and tasks. And then did start with like a overall interpretation, but no, that was kind of unnecessary.
Well, I think it was. I think it was helpful. You did a good job.
Yeah, I believe in my previous section, I had some sort of introduction, however you call it, an introduction or an overall interpretation.
Right.
I would be open to just adopting your format, how you broke this down into our official
Okay.
format. So then, Bill, you could just kind of follow Salem's template.
Yep.
I'll do the same with my work.
Yeah, I guess I'm not sure how best to go through it. I mean, like the summary of the summary is that the responses we got are people want a rural community. They don't want taxes to be outrageous. Okay with that meaning services aren't, luxurious, but there is, of course, a minimum standard to be met. So, I guess, yeah, unless anybody wants to talk through that summary at all, we could jump down to the goals.
Just had one point where you could rephrase one sentence, or we say, at the same time, there is limited support for large-scale residential, right there. But the meaning here is more like there is opposition to the following. Or you could say, like, there's limited support for this as long as it does not do your bullet points. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's certainly what it's trying to capture. That there is only limited support for those things, and in particular, the support is limited by the things that people care about here.
Yeah.
Being
So,
in opposition to those.
yeah, I would just rephrase it such that it's clear that your bullet points are what there is.
More clear.
Yeah.
Okay.
But does it, opposition, is that the word we want to use, or is it?
No, I mean, Salem is correct, I think, to say there's limited support for
Yeah.
certain commercial, residential, and industrial expansion. But I think what we want to say is, as long as this growth does
Oh,
not.
as long.
Am I interpreting this correctly?
That is how it should be read.
Yeah.
there is not a lot of support, and what support there is has these requirements.
Correct.
Okay.
So how do you want to rephrase that? I think it says what you're asking it to say already. but-
I would personally just, instead of particularly where such growth could, I would say as long as such growth does not. Right, we're trying to avoid increased demand for municipal services, avoid new infrastructure, avoid altering the rural character.
I think that wording, though, makes it sound like the support is greater than it is. Because as written, there's limited support, particularly where such growth could, versus there's limited support unless.
Yeah,
Well, that's not really what,
that's not what it's saying.
yeah.
I understand what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
but I think what Salem has written gets at the heart of what you're saying without giving a false number.
Say there's limited support for large-scale residential, commercial, or industrial expansion. I was basically gonna say exactly what it already says.
As it concerns the,
Especially when, yeah, it's really just a reword, especially when that growth could.
Yeah, you know what? I see what you're saying. Right, just,
yeah, particularly where, so if you especially take it particularly out, take especially, put that in, especially where such growth could. Now that gives it the strength you want it to say, because that's kind of the heart of what their concern is. But we don't want to overly mandate or overly speak that particular or especially part to make it stronger than what they intended.
Right.
Yet their concern is they don't want this growth, and here's the reason why they don't want the growth like that. Because it will have increased demand, require new infrastructure, alter the town's visual and rural character.
Yeah, I mean, I think, swap particularly for especially.
Yeah,
I guess anything else with the interpretation?
no, overall, I thought all of this is very thoughtful.
So then the first, since this was two sections, the first section is zoning. So, again, trying to interpret the responses into actionable goals. Goal 1 being preserve rural character while minimizing unwanted growth. And I guess, same thing, I don't really necessarily want to read every single bullet point.
No.
We'll take that, but,
yeah, no,
maybe just to say that's the goal.
yep,
And there are 6 objectives to try and capture that, and maybe just, I guess, for the record, so just people listening at home, like the objectives are things like, if the goal is preserve rural character while minimizing unwanted growth, objectives are things like limit development intensity in most areas, maintain the town's low-density development pattern, which then rolls into tasks like maintain low-density zoning in most districts. Those are things that, like, the boards can do. Avoid
Correct.
large-scale upzoning, strengthen conservation protections, require buffering, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's sort of, just kind of it should conclude with actionable things
yes,
that the town can do.
yes. And I think you did that well.
Um,
So, can I go on a little rabbit trail?
Yeah.
Do we have a,
How deep are you gonna go? All right, go.
well, it's a little rabbit, he hasn't dug too deep. So, do we have a sense when we talk about rural character, what is expected of that? So, as an example, Majority of experience for most people in town is from their home to the main corridors. Would you agree to that? Their
Yes.
predominant experience.
Um,
I mean, not a lot of people are going off checking out every side road there is to be seen,
yeah, okay, sure, I would say
okay?
that
So-
plus my local radius for
Correct.
local,
Right. So from both your houses, I mean, you come down off the hill either way, right? You go up the hill and come down, or go down the hill. Do you go up over the hill very often?
Go to like Mount Wallingford or shoot over to, like Thorndike, to, get over the lake that way.
Yeah,
Or shoot down sometimes to get over towards like Francistown.
okay, all right. So my question or my thought that I'd like to banter with you is, if our rural character is defined predominantly by our main corridors, in the sense that, at least I recall one, we don't want to become like, at least a personal statement, we don't want to become like Hillsborough or Goffstown. So how do we then identify that? Because right now in our rural character is pretty straightforward, the whole length of 114, except for maybe Lang Tots is a little more developed along 114 than anything else. Downtown is, we've got the center store, which is more country-ish type of expression. We have the car wash and the gas station, et cetera, but there's not a whole lot of development. So when we look at that corridor, it's rural. We're not putting in sidewalks, we're not putting in, as you say later on in another section, urbanization or suburbanization, yeah,
Yeah.
that word. Similarly, Concord Stage is the same, predominantly just rural, except for when they come upon the villages or the small cluster of homes, or even for that matter, many of those homes you don't even see because they're off the road, so to speak. So I guess the question to ask for identifying how do we manage that experience, because when I give directions to people who are coming to my home, don't blink, you'll go right through the town and you'll drive right by my house and you won't even pay attention, because the landmarks that you're used to from where you're coming from aren't there, unless you know them. You know, if like middle school, the gazebo, the town hall, Center Woods, or the police or fire station safety complex, or the bridge that you go over right before my house. Those types of things are natural for us, but for those coming from without, they're not, those things aren't noticed. So I'm wondering if there's a way for us to understand further what that rural character means.
I guess your earlier question was, do we think most people, most of their time is spent from their home to the main corridors? And I would tend to agree with that.
well,
But I don't necessarily then take that to say our main corridor is rural. Because like in my experience, it's getting off of that is when it's almost like that relief of, okay, now I'm actually off the main strip. There's like a beautiful field or a stone wall or like horses out in somebody's, going back to a different kind of field.
Sure.
Or the mountains or the lake. It is off of that. I don't think of very much.
But I agree with you. My concern, though, is that if that's the way we're going to define it, then that leaves open the corridors to be developed
Yep.
beyond something
And so,
we
yeah,
don't
and so
want.
I think it's two ways to answer rural, and I think those are the two ways. There's the sort of natural, undeveloped version, and there is the, like, hey, I have a couple of rusty trucks in the front, and I'd call 114 more like that. It's not pristine, but it's not, I don't know, bothering anybody that I'm aware of. You know, there's some, it's like, for the downtown part, you know, you're on 114, you pass Dimitri's, and you're kind of on that last hill, and you can start to see the mountains in the distance, start seeing some foothill, like, there's something about that spot right there.
Yeah, yep.
And it's not, looking at Dimitri, and even though that's tucked up on the hill, and it's not, you know, there's a post office and a bank down at the bottom, like, the lack of development does make it rural, but also those
The
kind of
bigger
special
picture things, yeah.
Yeah, and if there was like, you know, if you can't physically do it, but if the school had been placed like up on the hill and there was this big giant brick building right as you're starting to see those mountains, like it wouldn't have, that
Right.
visualization wouldn't have the same impact.
Sure.
So it's kind of intangible, but I guess both of those things are
Right,
rural.
okay. All right, I just wanted to flesh that out just so we're talking about it, so that just as an example, I'm working through 1 John in church on Sunday, and we're in chapter 4 and verse 7, and it says God is love. And so what does that mean? Because if we just leave it to define love as we understand it, as opposed to understanding what it's teaching us, it's two different definitions. So when we look at our rural character, everything about our community, so if we look at our seal, we see that rural character. So we want to have in our minds to communicate what the community has said to the planning board and to those powers that be, what that rural character looks like and means. So maybe that's a definition we need to come up with.
And that could be
Because
expressed in our introduction of the master plan
Right.
as it, so, and I think that would involve, it's not just, as we go in such depth in, you know, in pretty much every section, it's not anti-development. Some commercial buildings, public buildings can exist and, like, you know, coincide with real character. Like, you know, the post office is kind of quaint. That's our village post office. Your church, it's historically New England, right?
Right.
Or like the old school building in Clinton Grove near where I live. That's
Yep.
that's rural character the way I
Yep.
see it.
Right.
So if we're able to, put a finger on all that.
So that's the only thing I want us to really look at. I'm not asking you to change anything in this, but I wanted to ask that so that
Yeah, it's
we're
predominant
clear as a
throughout.
committee
Yeah.
to say, this is what we get the feeling from the community based upon their responses, what rural character looks like, and have a clear definition for that. So that there's no question as to what that intention is.
Since we've all actually written our sections, actually you can still do
Yes.
your section, but
Yep.
maybe Salem and I want to tackle a definition as homework for the next month.
Sure.
Maybe. I mean, someone's got to do it
Which
at
is
some
not,
point.
it's only 2 weeks away.
Yeah?
Okay.
We go back to the first Sunday, Wednesday.
Or we can also kick this can down the road farther.
Yeah, I think it's
Just,
achievable.
yeah, I'm not trying to muddy the water, I just felt that was something, because we've talked about that, and it's an overwhelming theme from the constituency that responded, that we really need to take to heart what that definition looks like.
Yeah, and I don't bring this example up to dredge it back up, but like Dollar General is an easy example that everybody uses all the time. And you can go, so like there are other towns in New Hampshire where they have a Dollar General, but it's got like the white clapboard siding and a pitched roof, and it looks more like that New England style building, even though it's of the same vintage as ours. So,
That's what
It's-
ours is supposed to look like.
and yeah, and so like I'm not trying to, again, dredge that up, but if those kind of things occur, and if we do, like if there is, and there will be more development on 114, I think it's those kind of things that like the planning board and I suppose zoning also need to keep in mind of like when there's an opportunity to nudge in a particular direction, like this is the direction that people want us to be
Yeah,
nudging.
right. Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the character of the middle school, has that flavor of clapboarding, even though it's brick. The clapboarding of the upper parts and the way it's designed has a kind of a mutual blend of the two concepts
I will
to
try
some
my best
degree.
to see that from now on. I just see condos.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I guess, so is it, we can just keep going through the goals, or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Goal 2 is expand housing options in a limited and targeted way. And this one's pretty quick, so maybe just to go through it. Objectives: support multi-generational living, provide small-scale housing flexibility with the tasks, then adopt clear ADU regulations that meet state minimums, allow cluster housing only when public land will be usable, and monitor housing outcomes to ensure changes remain consistent with community intent, which builds on a lot of, because we kind of went freewheeling at the last meeting, and I tried to capture some of that discussion there.
Yeah, yeah.
But also at the same time, like, the state has said X about ADUs, and the town can choose to do exactly that, or it could choose to do, you know, a limitless version of that, and,
Well, just passed all those that weren't concerning ADUs, so,
yeah. But it's, that's not the last time it will come up.
no.
And yeah, just stop me if you want to stop on one of these. So go-
I think it took me a second to realize what the public land was referring to. Then I thought about it and I realized, oh, it's like the common land within that development.
Correct.
Yeah, usually.
So perhaps if people know what cluster housing is, it doesn't need further development explanation. So it's probably fine. That's my only thought there.
Okay. And I suppose it's not always public either, because if it goes through,
Well, even in order for it to be cluster, that piece of property needs to be accessible to the public.
Oh, like the whole public?
Correct.
Oh,
but it's
that's-
not necessarily public land. It might be private land. that
It
is
might be
publicly
privately
accessible.
owned, but it would then be supervised by the Conservation Commission.
Or like a spin-off for somebody,
Say that again?
or one of the other, like preservation groups that
Correct.
takes it on.
Correct. Yeah, like
So I
the
mean,
watershed or whatever.
if I change that to just say publicly accessible land,
Or only when common land is accessible,
yeah, okay.
is clearly accessible to the public. So
That
what ends
would
up-
make,
what
that
en-
would
what
be
gen-
more clear to me, that
Right.
phrasing, yes.
What generally ends up happening, though, is that once this cluster is done and it's identified and there's an access, unless that access is posted and managed to make it accessible, because it can grow up, and all of a sudden you don't even know where to get onto the property. That's one of those things the Conservation Commission is not doing in being in taking care of those properties that are theirs.
Well, I know the examples we went over last time, though, were, it just happened to work out that the common land was like a cliff, or, you know, like,
Yeah, I gave one example of that, yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing with Duck Pond Estates over
Yeah,
here.
yeah.
The common land is like the tier
Ledge.
between,
Yeah.
they're gonna build houses on top,
Yeah.
and bottom, and you can't even walk in between.
Right.
So we
That's
have
the
a
common-
community rock climbing wall.
I guess,
go.
This is
yeah,
great.
if you can get between people's houses.
So how do we rephrase that then?
Common land rather than public land. Because, and that, I mean, it captures your point as well. It needs to be usable, but it's one of the tasks that, so it becomes, planning board should make sure that when it's carved up, it can be usable, and then conservation should make sure that it remains usable.
Right.
But it's, you know, it's on both sides.
Well,
of
can
that.
we make it usable and accessible?
Sure. Yeah, I like that. Goal 3, again, I'll pause, but improve transparency and communication. Just a summary being, how can the town do more to make the public aware of like what are land use regulations and how are decisions made? And if you're an applicant, what is expected of you? I was frustrated at one point last year looking at the planning board bylaws and realizing like they are not really followed during meetings. It's very clear about like what the chair should do, what the vice chair should do, and you know, if somebody's coming up for a conceptual, these things need to be met, and it's not always done that way. So what's the point of having that written down and that is what is publicly accessible. So again, not
So
to
I think we
pick on one particular thing, but
batted this around last time. This particular goal is part of every section.
yeah, and it was a question in every section of.
So that maybe, again, that's another, I think it's right to have this here, but I also believe, and in every section, but there needs to be an overarching recommendation based upon the input of the community
Yeah.
to say that we need a, whatever you want to call it, public relations liaison, or something to that effect, that,
Yeah, though, if something like that did exist, I think we would still need to have, like, specific tasks broken down like this to say,
yes,
this is what this person is supposed to be doing, or whether it's a volunteer board of, somebody needs to go and understand the system and write it all down. Because right, for those types of objectives, the tasks were things like create a plain language zoning guide with examples and illustrations,
right.
visual maps, flow charts.
Yeah, and so then if that's the case, if we were able to be that specific for each subsection,
Yep.
then we wouldn't need the committee, we wouldn't need the liaison if they were able to fulfill those things. Okay,
Goal 4, and this is the last one for zoning, allow limited appropriate commercial mixed use and industrial development. Same thing, support the residents, prevent strip style or highway oriented sprawl, maintain separation between incompatible uses. Those are the 3 objectives, with tasks like define and map appropriate locations for small commercial nodes, allow mixed use development, avoid broad rezoning for commercial use outside of identified areas, require site design standards that reflect rural character, scale, material, signage. I'm skipping some of them, but that's the idea.
great. Now, if I recall, when zoning was remapped in 2019, I think it was, people who own property could petition for their property to be rezoned something different. Like a lot of people on the corridor wanted commercial zoning. So there's several properties that it was like, you're zoned commercially, but you're already violating because you already got a residence there, you know what I mean? So in commercial zoning, you're not supposed to have a residence. You're not supposed to put residential in commercial, unless it's zoned backwards, like it's been. So those types of things can be mitigated by an assessment as to how, like, where would we put these things?
I mean, and really that was there because you've brought up, I mean, at this point for years, of things like B&B Lane, or there are undeveloped industrial sections like up directly on 114, right? Up like north of your house.
Yeah,
So there is some amount of mapping done, but like, is it appropriate? Is there a
Right.
reason that those aren't being chosen? Is there something the town could be doing at, you know, limited cost, limited financial cost, limited rural character cost, all the rest, to now fit in some way to help spread the tax base?
right. Okay,
Okay, so that is it for zoning. So then the other section I did was economic development. Goal 1, support a small-scale rural economy. with objectives: promote agriculture and rural businesses, encourage entrepreneurship, retain and support existing local businesses. Things like update zoning to explicitly allow and support farm stands, agritourism, value-added agricultural uses, support farm stands, possibly renew ag commission, simplify home business permitting as possible at the town level. I know a lot of that comes from the state, but, and promote local products. And I don't wanna bury it in the bullet point, but I do think an ag commission could help a ton with that.
And that's the only thought I had here, was that some other section, some other meeting, we mentioned bringing back, was there an Economic Development
Yeah.
Commission?
Or even the Chamber of Commerce.
Any of these three could be useful, but I mean, yeah, so.
But I did
fine as
a
is.
Google on, just this afternoon, on Economic Development Committee, and there's nobody around us but New Boston has that. It didn't leap off the page. I also did a Google search on active farms in Ware, New Hampshire, and I know of at least one farm that's not even online anywhere, that's active. But we're not, if we're looking at active, large-scale farming, we don't have that any longer. It's smaller cottage industry type of farming that's being done, where, you know, they're raising a couple beef cows a season, or goats a season or chickens or meat birds a season,
Well, I mean,
Mushrooms,
mushrooms.
I mean, Grant does thousands of chickens and dozens of cows.
Yeah, they're the one, and I'm not
We've got, like-
familiar with Good
Yep.
Earth Farm.
Good Earth Farm is on Poor Farm Road. He does a lot of he does a big CSA, veggies, and a lot of plant starts.
Okay.
we did.
So
a
those are the
CSA.
two farms that are online. Unless Zulip,
Oh, we're on.
I
Yeah.
didn't see Zulip on the map.
Oh, it's a Google destination. Yeah. Then there's Meadows End. There's a lot, yeah. I mean, but that's on them or on me too.
Well, Meadows
for-
End, is that in Ware or is that in Hopkinton?
I don't know where the line is
I
exactly.
think it's in Hopkinton,
Okay.
although they own a lot of property in Ware.
Um,
Ilsley's is another one that's active with beef and dairy and
Oh, that-
chicken.
and excellent ice cream.
Yeah.
We are almost through our winter supply. 1/2 gallon left.
But I think either, all three of those things, the Ag Commission, Chamber of Commerce, Economic Development Committee, or whatever it might be, would be helpful to add to that as a task to implement. Because if you take and sometimes it's hard depending on how big your screen is, but if you're able to take a decent-sized screen and put the map of Ware and zoom in on different places, you'll be seeing a lot of cottage industry. And I'm wondering if that should be part of that list too. You do talk about home businesses, which is all permitted in Ware, as long as you're living there. If you're not living there, it's no longer a home business.
I figured out why certain farms may not be popping up now. Like ours, for example, we're listed as temporarily closed based on the seasonality of our
It
business.
even says that.
Yeah.
There's, what was it I looked at? It was some business, and it says temporarily closed.
Hmm.
But yours will probably come up like that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Second goal, encourage small-scale commercial growth. The objectives: expand access to goods and services within the town, reduce reliance on travel to neighboring communities, support sustainable community-oriented business development. Tasks then: zone for small commercial nodes, support adaptive reuse, encourage shared infrastructure, ensure new commercial development is appropriately scaled to the community. And some of that's, I'd say obvious. I do think, like, the shared infrastructure is one that I haven't heard a ton of.
Can you define for me just very briefly adaptive reuse and shared infrastructure?
So, it's adaptive reuse being, like, don't tear down something, or don't, if there's a spot where a business could exist, and maybe the answer is they need to get through the building department to make sure the building is in a good enough state. Well, how can the town help with that, rather than like let a good old building with character fade away and get demolished, and then have a new strip mall type thing built right next to it?
Right.
That sounds great.
It's like the McDonald's in Freeport, Maine. Have you ever been to that McDonald's in Freeport,
Yeah.
Maine?
Driven past it.
It's in a old farmhouse.
Yeah, not so far from the LOB.
They repurposed the building instead of tearing it down. So that's what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
right, yep. And then shared infrastructure is kind of like, how can you have, we see with residential, like a shared driveway. Do you need to pave twice as much when you could have like a single entrance with like a 50% bigger parking lot? Same thing, I think that does come down to the town to say, what are we permitting, what are we allowing, what are we, hanging people up on in review? Yeah, just how can the amount of required development be minimized to achieve the same amount of like economic development?
Right. And so some of that would be helpful for off the beaten track, so to speak. Whereas, a good example, which is a negative example, is for the former BC Auto or the Big Boys Toys place. Their access is off Martin Road, because Martin Road spilled out there, and they couldn't get permitting when that building was first put up to have a separate entrance on 114 because of its proximity to Martin Road. So they had to go back up Martin Road in order to have that entrance. So there's that common
Yeah.
use type of thing, as opposed to trying to have yet another. And I think the next property, the old Ilsley Farm, is running into some of that design issue as to how to best spill out onto 114 without causing a headache with that corner. So.
So then goal 3, avoid large-scale or incompatible development. Objectives you'd expect: maintain town character, minimize traffic, infrastructure strain, and environmental impacts. Ensure land use decisions reflect long-term community priorities. And then the tasks break down into, and well, I said I wasn't gonna just read all these, but
Yeah,
like evaluate large proposal carefully, especially potential for high traffic generation, significant infrastructure demand. Planning board should formalize policy to include groups like DPW, Conservation Commission, et cetera, earlier in the process of large developments. I call that DPW because I know that's come up with like.
yep,
And really, it's not even the planning board at that point. I'd even include the board of selectmen for like accepting roads at all. Because maybe, and I guess really that may be the next, that does come up somewhere. I guess it's goal 5 though. So maybe just to put a pin in that one. Then I'll go to goal 4. Use economic development tools selectively and cautiously. So this is align incentives with community values and avoid creating long-term fiscal burdens. So it's, we shouldn't burden the existing community or future financial costs just to make sure somebody can come in.
that was my position on the solar array. There's no funding or planned funding for its decommission.
Yep, exactly. And, yeah, too often you hear, oh, that's 30 years, we'll figure it out then.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
but then
30
we're not being good stewards.
That's right.
Yeah, it talks about developing a clear policy, prioritizing incentives, focusing on retention, because that's another one. It's like, there are businesses here, and we don't want to lose them either. You know,
Well,
what-
if you think about the property across from the old, or next two properties down from Sinel's, that little industrial building.
Yep.
That's had, since I've lived here, like, since it's been built, 4 different companies have been in there. Instead of tearing down and remodeling, they've repurposed what they had available. So,
That's one, like, if you really stare at it, it's just kind of a warehouse-looking building, but
Right.
it's not objectionable,
No.
like driving, because it's kind of down and off to the side.
Right.
It didn't need like a strict visual buffer,
right.
but it's not right there in your face. It's doable. So goal 5, ensure new developments cover their infrastructure and service costs. This is one, like Phil, you had asked, hey, can I take a hack at explaining impact fee type stuff? So
Yep.
that's all captured in here.
Yes.
But yeah, objectives, minimize the financial burden of growth on existing taxpayers, align development with the town's capacity to provide services, and maintain fiscal stability as land use changes occur with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different tasks, with some of them with their own sub-bullet points. But really, it just breaks down to, before taking an action that seems like it will have a big cost, or even a moderate cost, like, try and quantify it, and quantify what is that gonna look like in 10 or 20 or 50 years.
I mean,
And there are existing mechanisms in the town to deal with that, like CIP. We don't need to start from scratch in a lot of this.
So maybe you could help me understand a component of the CIP that I've yet to see, like maintaining our buildings. Is there a line item within the budget from your past experience for building maintenance?
There is, and it's not enough to cover what we already have.
Okay, so I've gone through several CIP presentations, and buildings and building maintenance are not on those programs.
Yep. And
So
I don't disagree with you. I think that is, if there is a need to maintain the rural character of the town, then I think that needs to be something the CIP understands better and prioritizes,
right,
versus, creating new things. Or if there's a cost, maintenance is,
so could we put in leverage annual CIP to track and predict not only service but also maintenance costs?
yeah, I think it's, so the cost there is the cost of, I think that's fair, service and maintenance costs.
Because that deals with infrastructure and service costs.
Yeah.
So as another example, the old town hall has been repainted in the last 25 years 6, 7 times, and it can't keep the paint.
Yeah. And the horse shed has been an ongoing,
Right,
yeah.
historical,
Yeah, well, and I know, cause it has been, when we talk about the money for it, I know, like, Tom Clow, when he was on the board, had a lot of energy and passion behind warrant articles that dedicated money, like, raise taxation, through taxation, commit money to the building maintenance funds. I do not recall how often those passed.
I don't recall them at all, for that matter.
I'm thinking the last one, and the years kind of, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago. But that has been attempted. But to your point, it needs to be, anytime we take something on, like the solar panels, like what's it gonna cost us immediately? What's it gonna cost us every year? And don't just assume that the cost this year is the same cost 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and don't just hand wave that, well, surely it will get cheaper, or surely we'll figure it out. It's only burdening everybody who lives here in 5 years.
Right. And how much of that solar array on that building is gonna function in the middle of the winter when snow accumulates on it because it's not melting off? Someone needs to go up there and clean it off.
I'm gonna go on the record as being in support of the solar array. You guys don't have solar panels. They work really well. The snow runs right off. That building has great solar exposure, and it'll pay. We don't even pay for it.
No, that's never true. Somebody always pays for it.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, like, there's a grant to pay for it,
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
to
just-
put it up.
that's-
and it'll generate probably $50, $60, $100,000 of electricity in his lifetime at least.
Right, but where's that money going? That's my concern. The way it was presented, we would save $9,500 a year. We saved that. Where is it being saved?
In the electric bills.
That's all. So there's a monetary benefit, but there's no means by which there's a maintenance program. That hasn't been talked about. Decommissioning, that hasn't been talked about.
No, I take your point. I take your
Do you
point.
know what I mean?
I do,
Because it's
but the
different, it's
problem is,
different
like,
for you as an individual.
No, I understand. The problem is, like, the way it's presented to the public, like, it's a binary choice. It's like, do we have this or do we not have this? Not like, yes, we want this, but can we talk about X, Y, and Z? There's no, unless I'm missing something, is there a discourse for stuff like that?
Just earlier in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah, public hearings and showing up to meetings. But
Yep.
Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to show up to meetings. Is there anything else on goal 5? So goal 6, maintain stable property taxes by limiting service expansion. Kind of self-explanatory, and really tied into 5. Avoid increases in municipal service levels that drive higher taxes, ensure new development does not create long-term fiscal burdens, prioritize efficient use of existing infrastructure and services. And I guess it's really another common theme of just like reusing the buildings. Are there services, because that was something that came up on, you had the, not conflicting necessarily, but there was on the town warrant, I'm gonna butcher this. They wanted to increase the ambulance rate or something like that, and 95% of that is charged to the schools. But then the school is at the exact same time trying to hire a trainer, which would have stopped them from using the ambulance. And again, details are roughly that. It's like, why aren't these things figured out ahead of time?
I think it's because
Sorry, which bullet point?
there was
were
an
we-
understanding that the trainer wouldn't pass and we still needed coverage. So for any sporting event I'm not even sure if it's on the middle school, at the high school at least, you can't have it unless there's a trainer or ambulance service there on campus.
And well, to answer your question, I guess I was,
Yeah, I
I'm like,
understood your example.
prioritize efficient use of existing infrastructure and services.
Okay.
So,
Goal 6 test.
Yeah, no, I see.
which
I was,
then I was thinking about the same thing we were talking about earlier, reusing buildings or sharing driveways, or like, it's kind of a common theme of where do we have waste or potential waste before taking something on, whether it's building a parking lot or buying a new vehicle or something, like, is the town doing enough to make sure that is truly necessary?
so would finding waste in the system or just identifying potential synergies in the system, that's not the type of thing that Finance Committee does? They review future spending, is that correct?
The Finance Committee is looking at the proposed budget, proposed warrant articles from the town and school districts.
Okay, so
to
this is
say-
not really part of their purview, just to like,
No.
No,
and this is no one's job? Is that what you're saying? Yeah.
Yeah.
there's
So
budget
is it-
committee, that's
so-
not a thing.
So
Budget
as,
committee?
so as a positive example of what he's talking about, when we first started this process, we had someone in the audience who was saying, we don't have this, we don't have that, pertaining to, public gathering places. And my response was, that's why they built the school the way they built it, so that the cafeteria becomes a meeting place for the community, not just for the school, and it's available to the community, just as the Old Town Hall is available to the community. Granted, sometimes it's difficult because of scheduling, but for the most part, those facilities are available. Our youth programs are all independently run from the community, from the town, but use town facilities to maintain or to express those opportunities. So the Ware Athletic Club does not own a single piece of property, yet uses all the town facilities in order to make those programs work. So there's a synergy that's kind of awkward, in my estimation, that takes place.
And for the community space discussion, I agree, like the middle school, there's a ton of that. But then we see both the library and Center Woods are both saying we need more so that we can be a community center. Like, but we have that, and maybe there is a need for more, but the justification there doesn't seem to be a justification or anything backed up by data. It just seems to be, well, I want this for where I am.
So you have scouts at the Center Woods?
All the scouts is at the middle school.
There's nobody at Center Woods anymore?
At least the Cub Scouts that I'm involved with, like, it's all at the middle school. And anytime I've
Like,
gone to a
so,
Boy Scout thing, it's at the middle school.
okay, because I went to a Boy Scout thing at at Center Woods.
It could be the other troop, I don't know.
Oh, there's two troops?
Yeah, there's 24 and 529.
Didn't know that.
Salem, for my notes here, could you repeat where the two locations you were talking about for the ambulance and the athletic trainer were?
In the town and, Ware School District, right?
No, John Stark. John Stark hasn't had a trainer in several years. So the ambulance service covers,
John Stark and the middle school.
not just John Stark.
I guess,
think
and
the
that's, I
school-
think
if
what I
anything-
said the first go round, I left it vague because I wasn't 100% sure, but the town and school warrants.
I understand.
Voted on this past year.
Which both failed, I think, right?
I don't know.
I know that the athletic trainer failed. See, that goes back to your comment earlier, like 5-10 minutes ago, about attending meetings and being knowledgeable. You can put as much information out there as you can, but unless people are reading it and are asking questions about it, our constituency is not really informed in that respect. So by developing these procedures is working in the right direction, but only if they're picking up to read it, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I agree, except, where I would carve out an exception, maybe that's putting too strong, like the zoning stuff. Like, nobody's required to vote, nobody's required to pay attention, but they are required to go through the planning board and the zoning process if they're trying to take a certain action.
Right.
So, in that way, I think it is, the imperative goes on to the town to
Yep.
make that as easy.
So
as
some of those
possible.
procedures that you've alluded to are being worked on right now by the land use. Whereas we went through a season of 4 years without a good department. Now that we have a good department, the people there are more apt to be able to lead you through the process, as opposed to prior people involved either weren't available or weren't knowledgeable about the process. And that's still not something that you learn it and it's done. That's still an ongoing learning curve to bring up to date some of the new things, because immediately upon the adoption of the new ADU thing in July that permitted a detached ADU statewide and towns could not zone against it, people started asking questions. And until now, we weren't in compliance with that because our zoning prohibited detached ADUs. And so some of those changes are still in the mix of being implemented and explained properly in a means that, you know, as far as like those illusions, not illusions, but the things you outlined. Plain language zoning guide, that type of thing. I think they're working on that, but that's not a done deal for any time, because if you do a change of personnel and they come in with a different set of definitions or understandings, there's still a learning curve as to how we do things or not how do we do things.
Oh, that was the last goal. A lot of similar tasks associated with those objectives.
Could you,
Thinking and planning before committing to expensive things.
right, can you get on the last one, on the last page, could you flesh out or coordinate land use decisions with CIP?
So this is all, so, yep, and that is meant to tie back to goal 5, the second bullet point there, leverage annual CIP to track and predict service and maintenance costs.
Mhm.
So it's in the other direction, like, if in a contrived example, if there were a 100-lot subdivision that came before the planning board,
Right,
and it would be useful to communicate with CIP, maybe not even directly, but understand that, hey, what CIP is looking at accounts for this many miles of roads, but this 100-unit subdivision is gonna add, again, making up numbers, a mile of road. What's that going to do to the plow requirements? What's that going to do to the school requirements? Again, and this came up plenty in the last year or two. CIP should be more involved with the schools, and
yes.
we talked about that plenty
Yep.
at the time, writing all the bylaws.
And they're still not interested.
Yeah, I mean, it's, a ton of that's on the schools.
Well,
but
not so
saying-
much the schools, but on the school boards.
Sure,
You know, if they're gonna manage or help manage the process that the schools are under, they're the ones who should be stepping up to the plate and say, this is our plan and purpose. Do they have a CIP for I have yet to see that.
yeah, no,
I mean, because there was a time when the population at John Stark was larger than its facility. And they had 2 modular classrooms, two double wide trailers, classrooms in the back parking lot in order to facilitate the population of the campus.
so, yeah, that's the idea behind that, is when making these, especially large decisions, what is that going to do to
So to,
the plan?
right, so should we, because there's a process when the planning board is looking at these things. What does the fire department think? What does the police department think? What does DPW think? And they all say there's nothing, no conflicts or whatever. But are they really asking the right question of themselves pertaining to this, which affects the CIP? That's a good point.
I guess another callback one, kind of like the impact fee require developer-funded infrastructure when infrastructure changes would only benefit a single development. Again, a contrived example, in this 100-lot subdivision, if they're gonna build a bunch of roads that only go to those houses, like, why should the town ever pay for those or perhaps ever maintain those? Why not, why not make those private roads?
Why wouldn't that's not the default? A development shows up and that's not like everyone in that development has to pool in together and hire their snowplow? The
Correct.
town?
Like that was just happening with Portland, the Portland Ave subdivision on 114. I don't know,
Across from the old from the fire station.
Yep,
yeah,
yep.
so that, like that road, I don't know if it happened yet, but it was going to happen. Like that road was gonna be accepted, and now that it's town-owned road, and now the town has to maintain it.
But it has to, in order for it to come before the town to be accepted, it has to meet all the requirements that the town engineer has designed for that piece of for that road. So that's been repaired once in the time frame that it's been, that whole development changed hands. And then there was another Al's Drive off of South Sugar Hill was just remapped. Not Cortland, used to be Daniels Road, it's something else now. But that was another one.
And it's gonna happen with Skeeto Road.
Yeah.
Like, why should the town take that on?
Who would be arguing that they should? I mean, in this, another consecutive year of us not passing our budget, obviously people are concerned about this sort of thing.
So let's reel that back in, because the whole process starts with the planning.
Yes, okay.
So in order for that development to be passed, there has to be an agreement that this access has to meet road standards, and they have a bond for that to take place, and the town requires them to put a bond on it for that development to go in. And that bond is only released when the town accepts the road. So there's a plan in the procedure, so if we're going to look at this from a planning procedure, do we now say, no, that's a private development, like unto, I can't remember the name of the place right now.
Like, I picture everything on the south end of the lake, all those little roads. under
Yeah,
there.
those are all private roads.
Yeah.
The condo association, on Horace is privately owned, but they still had to maintain a certain, they can't be all dirt. They have to be paved in order for those things to be accepted.
And so what the bullet point is intended to capture is disincentivize developers, like people who don't live in this town, don't care about this town, maybe they got some cheap land, and their incentives currently say, let me chop this up and sell all the pieces and, rake all my profits. It makes sense as an incentive, but the town could say, hey, we aren't going to bear the ongoing costs of you accepting your profits. You have to bear that cost either through the cost of the homes or figuring out a homeowners association. Because again, usually when that's done, that's set up like that developer is the guy that runs the homeowners association, has to figure out the things like the plowing and whatnot. It's not an unheard of thing. It's just, at least recently, the town has not cared to do that. When I think that, again, just of course somebody would choose to do that. When if your options are the town will pay for it, or of course they're going to make the town pay for it. And so it's on the town to change that. took notes on the things to change. Yeah, I guess I'm pleased that it was well received.
Yes.
The only other thing I'll say is I still haven't had dinner yet.
Yeah, we're done. So we need to move to the two pieces of minutes that we
These are
have.
the shortest minutes ever. We can.
So
we can
we'll
get 'em
start
done.
with January 7th minutes.
This is great. I wasn't there, so I can abstain.
I move to accept the minutes of January 7th as presented.
I second that.
Discussion? All in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Opposed? 201. February 19th minutes, 2026.
All looks correct to me.
Okay, motion,
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of February 19th.
second,
I second that.
discussion. All in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. 3-0. So our next meeting is April 1st. Moving back to the first Wednesday.
Yeah, I'll be coming from Cub Scouts, so
Okay.
a few minutes late.
Well, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second?
Further discussion of the motion? All in favor? Yes.
Yes.